My name is Jacob Warren. Welcome to this quick video on chopping for the double bass. Chopping is a percussive bow technique where rather than playing the string horizontally for pitch notes, we're instead going to use the bow vertically to get percussive sounds as well. Sounds something like this. It's a very useful technique when you're trying to back up another musician and provide both harmony and some rhythm to accompany them. In this lesson, we're going to go over how to make the basic chop stroke. And what we're looking for with this stroke is for it to sound like a hit on a snare drum. Nice and clean and clear, like that. So this is going to be a little different depending on if you play French or German bow. For French bow, we're taught that we want to keep a nice rounded thumb at all times to keep the hair nice and flat on the string. The first thing you're going to need to do is actually straighten out your thumb. And you'll see that relative to the bass, what this does is it actually curves the hair or points the hair down towards the floor rather than keeping it nice and flat. For German bow, this rotation is actually going to need to come from the wrist. Now, when making the chop stroke, there are three main components: the attack, the skate, and the eventual stop. Now, the attack needs to go in towards the bass with the hair pointed towards the floor. And if we hit it hard enough, it'll actually force the bow, given that the hair is angled, to skate down just a little bit. And then there will be so much force that eventually friction will stop it. And that's going to create that nice clean sound. So some common mistakes that I see with making this chop stroke is that if we don't have our hair angled, we're not going to get much skate. It's not going to make much of a sound at all. I also see people tending to think that they need to force the bow down towards the floor. The actual attack needs to go directly into the bass so that you get enough force in the string to create that big full sound. And then the final mistake I see is that people will let it skate for too long. We don't get a defined sound. The action for making that attack comes from two places in French bow. It comes from my wrist and it comes from my fingers extending. Like this, and then in. For German bow, the attack is going to come from the wrist and a little bit of the elbow. Once you've found this clean and clear chop stroke, we've gotten the first half of the stroke. I like to think of this part as the down stroke of the chop. Even though we're not playing horizontally, we're playing vertically, it still feels a little bit like a down bow. The other component of the chop is actually something that feels like an up bow, and that's the release. So we chop, and then we let the hair off the string with a little bit of a hit. Feels like an up bow. You can actually see my fingers moving. And if we do this in rhythm, we have a strong, weak relationship that's going to let us build a lot of really cool grooves. As you start to learn this stroke, you'll want to make sure that you're using the smallest amount of muscles and the smallest muscles possible. So more of the fingers and the wrist. That way, when we go quick, we can do it and we don't get bogged down by all of our body having to move. All right, so there we go. That is the foundation of chopping, and it can lead to a bunch of really cool grooves, but you gotta make sure that you make that chop sound as clean and clear as possible first before you start doing all of the other stuff that you can do with it. I hope you enjoyed, and look out for my next lesson. Thanks.